Analysis machine. Open the game library. Understood. Please make a selection. Boot up GreedFall, please. Accessing data. If you've seen any of our gaming content, then you should be aware that we're not above digging through the bargain bin to find a good game, and it's from the contents of said bin that I located the topic of today's video, GreedFall. Now, in the current and ever-shifting climate of gaming, I think it's quite relevant to highlight GreedFall, a game that most of you have probably never heard of, and explain how games and practices like these can be the remedy that the gaming community needs in a time that people are paying too much for half-finished games. So if you're ready for a little entertainment, then let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, before anything else, I have to get two important facts out of the way. For one, GreedFall is a far cry from what should be a AAA gaming experience, and rightly so, as it comes out as a AA game. But for reference, that typically means smaller creation teams and budget, which often results in less impressive graphics, music, and more contained gameplay. And two, I got GreedFall for very cheap, about $7.99, give or take. And those two things will prove very important to my experience. So, like many of you before today, I never even heard of GreedFall before I played it for myself. I was perusing the bargain bin when I saw an interesting title for a very cheap price. After looking at the trailer, I was on the fence. My gamer sense told me this would be a game that could benefit from a good amount of polish, but at the same time, I could see it was quite a large game considering the price. I reasoned that it would only take a few hours playing the game to get my money's worth, and took the plunge. So let me get my gripes out of the way first. Most of the cutscenes are nothing to write home about. They use this odd lighting technique that someone more knowledgeable than myself can describe, which makes some scenes too dark to really get all the details, while others seem like the tint is off by a couple of shades. The combat is pretty easy to solve. Once you unlock a few skills that you can get pretty early in the game, you can pretty much use the same techniques to overcome any enemy, with relatively low difficulty. After I achieved a Midas level, I believe I only died about 3 times, and one of them was a misstep against the final boss. Collision bugs are not rare. If you're exploring an area and you feel some light resistance, just let it go. It's not worth spending a full 20 seconds slowly clipping back in bounds. If there was something there for you, it would be easier to access. The loading was another grievance. Transitioning between cities and zones can take from 30 seconds to a full minute. It's so slow they let you travel to an in-between hub when jumping from cities. But even still, after you leave the in-between zone, you still have to wait, and even the more local loading has its rough edges. A particular one is sometimes when you walk into certain buildings, there'll be a split second where everyone is just standing still, then they'll all move in sync to their assigned spot, which gives this disturbing feeling that everyone is aware of your presence and is just pretending to be busy. Which in a way is true, but it definitely is immersion breaking, and pretty creepy looking. But even with all these front-loaded grievances, I count this as a minor footnote of my overall experience with GreedFall, and a big factor of this outlook, as mentioned, was the price. When I purchased the game, my hope was that I would at least get my money's worth, and the truth is, I achieved that within the first 4 hours of my 70-hour playthrough. So now, I think it's time I told you what's great about GreedFall, and why I enjoyed my experience so much, starting with making a character. Stats in GreedFall have a D&D-like approach. So right from character creation, you're prompted to invest stats into categories, such as strength, agility, accuracy, intuition, charisma, and more. I was going for a spellblade type character, with proficiencies in magic and light swords, though I would eventually add a proficiency with using pistols, just to give myself more tools to tinker with. The game starts out on a pretty engaging note. You're a minor diplomat, set to journey to a distant island nation in order to strengthen relationships with various nations attempting to stabilize their footing in this new world, as well as foster relationships with the indigenous people on the island, while seeking out a cure for a mysterious plague afflicting your homeland. But before you can do any of that, you have to locate your lovable, though kind of a screw-up of a cousin, who spent his last night in town partying too hard, and has gotten himself in some trouble.
Been monumentous, gentlemen, but I have more important things to attend to. An island to govern, treaties to sign, riches to expedite, and a demanding father to impress.
Something I learned quickly, and that was very appealing about GreedFall, is that they let you tackle problems from multiple angles and levels. If you got the gold to spare, you can bribe the guards to get into a restricted area. Or, if you have a silver tongue, like my character with high charisma, maybe you can talk your way in. Or, assuming your stealth skills high enough, you might try the sneaky approach. Or, maybe if you can find a spare guard uniform lying around, you might be able to briskly walk right in, like you're running late for your shift. Or you can just trim the fat and beat them all up if you think you can, but that'll probably hurt your reputation, starting a fight in a public street with city officials.
And I have a feeling they're expecting company. Be careful. The slightest itchy word to these brutes will have them drawing blades to scratch it.
Negotiation may be the solution. As you say, this breed of brutes won't spit on ransom money.
What a waste. I'd rather sneak around them than give half a coin to these seedy fellows.
And some of these decisions had a lot more implications than they first appeared. You might not see the harm of exposing a swindler in the middle of a crowded street. That is until the crowd works itself into a frenzy in an attempt to deliver some good old-fashioned street justice. Then you have to decide, does this petty criminal who attempted to make a positive change through underhanded means deserve to be beaten to death? Or will you put yourself and your reputation in harm's way to reach a more peaceful resolution? I had to delay departure because I want to make sure I did every side quest available before departing, and the world really gets fleshed out in these interactions.
Constantine, it's me! My dear cousin! Oh, my lucky star! Always there to pull me out of my fires.
I do what I can.
But once arriving on the island, I found that there was no shortage of events that would pull me deeper into the story, and I want to share two particular events here. In one mission, after arriving a little too late to stop a battle between the colonists and one of the local tribes, in the immediate aftermath, you're given a side quest to help the severely injured clinging to life on the battlefield. They do not give you any supplies for this. It's a task that can only be completed if you happen to have enough medicine on hand. I'm the type of gamer who likes to stay fully stocked. I'm hesitant to use a single potion even on the final boss, just in case there's a super secret extra final boss after the end credits. So the lack of supplies, something that would be hindering to some, was no issue for me. The issue would come with another gamer's trait Reaper possesses, and that is, when it comes to games, little more ranks above loot. So here I am on a recent battlefield, bodies everywhere, crying and moaning, people in the distance, fire still burning, but all I can see is a shining light indicating that all of these bodies have drops. So first things first, I start grabbing as much loot as I can. Swords, helms, some have full armor sets, some are damaged, some are in good condition. Either way, I can sell them and make a killing. So while saying things like, "War has no winners, only losers," and "oh, such a tragic thing," I was about 2/3 done scouring the battlefield when I noticed the subtle timer that had been ticking down all the while, and realized this quest had a time limit. The injured people would not hold out much longer. I went into a mad dash, backtracking to the 3 injured people I passed while looting bodies. I quickly administered the medicine. Then, fully abandoning my quest for free loot, I went in desperate search for the rest. I was actually starting to panic as the clock ticked down. I'd really just left people to suffer and die unnecessarily so I could loot some corpses. I mean, surely we're all guilty of putting off being a hero until we fulfill our own selfish goals, but here they're actually making you feel the weight of your actions. Not cool. It really came down to the wire as I was searching frantically for the last injured. I finally found them and applied the medicine with literally 1 second left on the clock. When they thanked me for my kindness, talking about being able to return to their families, I actually felt a little guilt and hoped they couldn't see all the extra swords I was carrying. Another highlight immersive moment came in the form of a trial. After dismantling an evil sub-faction guilty of human trafficking and experimentation, assassination, and dark magic, I had the ringleader, a deranged but well-respected and connected doctor, at blade point. All it would take is one thrust to end his miserable life, but I knew even though he was at the forefront, there were a lot of other wicked individuals involved. If I ended him here, all these cockroaches would scatter, and it would only be a matter of time before they reassembled and began the cycle again. On the other hand, he could be forced to stay in trial, which would expose the depths of these monstrous crimes and drag all of his associates, conspirators, and sympathizers to the forefront. This was a risky move too. The guy had some very wealthy and powerful politicians in his pocket, many that outranked myself, and he even showed a smugness to the idea of being put on trial. Despite that, I still saw the trial as the better option, though I had no idea how involved it would be. First, I had to hire the best prosecutor money could buy.
We will have lots to do if we want the doctor to pay for his crimes. The accused has a lot of support. Any evidence and testimonies you can gather will be useful.
Then I had to turn over a key piece of evidence I'd mistaken for random loot I'd found while raiding the hideout, as well as look into some of the evil doctor's personal affairs, to get ironclad proof of ongoing multi-layered involvement. Then I had to convince several witnesses to testify, which were terrified of taking the stand, and rightly so. Not long after securing one of the key witnesses, I was returning to them to report an update on the coming trial, only to see that they were being attacked. I ran to her, but by the time I reached her, she was already dead, and the game autosaved her death. I was pissed. Not at the game, but at the injustice. Now, I don't usually do this because of the immersion break, but I was too invested at this point, so I reloaded my game and had no issue redoing half an hour of gameplay to get another chance to protect this brave victim. This time, when I rounded the corner, I pulled my pistol and shot the attacker. I guess increasing my accuracy was worth it after all. The trial lasted 3 days, but it was worth it for that guilty verdict. The Mad Doctor's good name was tarnished, his associates defamed and jailed, and the Doctor himself faced public execution. And I had a front row seat. There's a lot more great things I can highlight about GreedFall. I like the D&D style stat system, I like that customization was very simple but still effective. I think they did a fantastic job on covering mature topics like prejudice, religion, survival's guilt, tribalism, and corruption, without getting preachy about it. They also did a good job conveying the concept of morality. Prioritizing loot over saving lives was not the only time I was forced into a moral dilemma during my playthrough. In one instance, due to my low stats in some areas, I was forced to do something so underhandedly slimy, I seriously debated grinding for several hours to level up high enough to avoid it. And speaking of slimy, they did a great job capturing the precarious dance of politics, understanding each side has its saints and devils, and that there truly is no one side that can satisfy every need, but that all parties will need to reach a state of compromise. As much as I enjoyed GreedFall, there's one thing that really made the experience worthwhile, and once again, that's the price. It might sound weird to say in this day and age, but the tone and expectation for the game starts right from what's written on the price tag. The relationship between price, expectation, delivery, and performance is a very real and important concept of gaming, and it's really only a controversial topic in a time where it's normal for AAA companies to charge $70+ for a half-finished, ugly, unpolished, mediocre experience. I can insert a number of modern titles here, but since I've already voiced my opinion on Pokemon Legends ZA on the channel, let's talk about that. If you're paying $100+ for the full experience of a game, then you have the right to expect something spectacular, something beautiful, something memorable, and something unique. But in ZA's case, what you get is an ugly, empty, repetitive, underperforming mess. And if you did happen to enjoy the game, that's fine, but it's my belief that if you're paying for one of the highest priced games ever produced, you have the right to expect a matching experience. It's literally the same way everything else works. Imagine paying $120 for a fancy dinner, and the experience was indistinguishable from the food and atmosphere you'd experience at McDonald's. You'd probably be disappointed. And look, I'm not hating on Mickey D's, but what I'm saying is, what's the justification for paying 10 times more if it's all just about the same experience? And game companies need to remember that simple logic. GreedFall is not a perfect game, by any means. I think I made that quite clear in my gripes list, but because I paid such a modest price for it, whenever I see something like mismatched textures or a bland menu screen, I'm not thinking, really? I can't believe I paid X amount of money for this. While on the other hand, I continue to be impressed by the amount of options and story details available to me, thinking, wow, I'm pleasantly surprised that they put so much detail into this experience. It's a simple psychological shift that has a major impact on the dynamics of purchase and satisfaction. Or I can put it this way, if Pokemon Z8 released in exactly the same state and cost $30, no one would be making a big fuss about the graphics looking 10 years behind the times, or how suffocating it feels being trapped in a small, ugly, empty city, or that they clearly padded the runtime with repetitive, mind-numbing side quests. Instead, people would be praising Pokemon for their decision to make so many sacrifices in order to make the game available to more people. And whether people want to admit it or not, whether or not someone has to break their bank to enjoy your game is going to be a big factor. So true, one of the main reasons I want to spread the word about GreedFall is because I had a great experience, especially considering the price. But the other reason is GreedFall actually has a sequel, which should be coming out within a week or two of this video's posting. And similar to the first, I had no idea it was even a thing. I was just looking up information on GreedFall in general when GreedFall The Dying World came up. I thought it was another DLC, but quickly realized it was a whole sequel. Well, a prequel actually. The story takes place several years before the original story, and though I'd be more excited about exploring GreedFall's future after the event of the first game, and real time with pause has never been my preferred combat style, GreedFall has built enough good faith with me to give this game my attention, and also help spread the word, which I think is definitely needed, with the game launching in pretty close proximity to Crimson Desert, a likely contender for Game of the Year. But even if only a few hundred people ever see this video, and a handful decide to check out GreedFall or its prequel, I'll consider it a job well done. And more than anything, a nod to the practices from GreedFall, hoping other studios will follow its example, to pursue original stories instead of repetitive slop, to turn mature topics into engaging, thought-provoking interactions instead of an opportunity to preach and virtue signal, and lower the price so more people have the opportunity to enjoy it, instead of milking the customers for every penny they think they can get away with. Or in other words, allow the greed to fall. You just couldn't resist, could you? Don't give me that. We both knew I'd say it at least once. Regardless, I think the tides are turning, as small developers are fighting back against predatory practices, and a lot of gamers are waking up to the truth that they don't have to give their hard-earned money to corporations that don't value their patronage. But anyway, we already dropped the roll credit signal, so it's about time to bring this review to a close. My name is D-Reaper, and I'm a YouTuber for fun. Today's challenge? Don't be greedy. Good luck, and hopefully we'll be seeing you all in the next one.